Okay, sir, we are live. Welcome everyone to Meet the Masters. Tim Watson here, joined today by Master Vince Melchiorre. Good afternoon, sir. Thanks for joining me.
Good afternoon, sir. Thank you for having me. It's my honor.
Awesome. Thanks for doing the quick change uh, from one outfit, one uniform to another, basically, right?
That's what it is. It's all about the dress code.
It's honestly, it's not that far off from one to another.
No, not at all. The tie around your neck is a lot more restricting than this dobok top.
That's right. So how are things going for you right now?
Things are great. I mean, we're fully open. We have been for a while. We were in compliance with CDC. We were masking, and now masks are optional in Philadelphia. So it's starting to pick up again, and with good turnouts.
Awesome.
We're getting a fair amount of new signups too, which is really good to see. And this, I'm talking about Shin in South Philadelphia.
Yeah, and I think it's great. And I was talking to someone about this, where you see a lot of years in the summer, people start to slow down, and we're not quite as busy. And this year is not the case so far, at least from what we're seeing.
Yeah, people are trying to make up for lost time, and people that wanted to start are finally coming in. And it's nice. It's nice to see after being shut down for so long and doing everything on Zoom.
Did you teach any Zoom classes?
We didn't have the Zoom because, believe it or not, a lot of our students don't have the internet. I mean, where we're at in South Philadelphia, it's a lower income. But myself and Master White did some videos of all the Hyungs, and we put them up. So I leave that up to somebody else because I'm old and I don't know how to put all that stuff up. But someone put that up, I think, on what's it, Snapchat, whatever.
Okay.
One of those things.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know much about Snapchat either. Snapchat or YouTube or something like that.
The other one, yeah.
Yeah, we did quite a few of those videos as well, and honestly, I think they're more exhausting than teaching class, because you have to manufacture the energy in an empty room, and Zoom was the same way.
Yeah, that's true. And in fact, I still have hearings and trials via Zoom, and it's exhausting. You have to do certain things and send in exhibits a certain way, and thank goodness we have court reporters that can split the screen, because I wouldn't know how to do that. But it's so much more tiring trying to have exhibits and other people that you have to see on the screen and keep track of everything. I typically have my Zoom on one computer and then my documents on another one, because that makes it easier for me than trying to split my screen. So.
Yeah, I imagine so. You probably learned more about computers this past year than you ever have, huh?
Yeah, I mean, when I started in an office, you pushed the top of the typewriter and had carbon paper. Kids today don't even know what carbon paper is.
That's right. We watched Searching for Bobby Fischer last night, and at one point they had a dot matrix printer coming up through something, and the kids were like, "What kind of printer is that?"
Yeah, I mean, they wouldn't know. And they used to have mainframe rooms, used to be the size of someone's first floor. That's how big the computers used to be.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yeah.
A couple people saying hello, Natalie and Lindsay from Great Britain. Sunny Great Britain for once.
Oh, wonderful.
Hello.
Thank you. Hello.
Rodney Ralph says, hello, sir. One of my favorite Masters sessions at Region 8 Black Belt Camp back in 2008.
Yeah, good people. Thank you, Rodney.
I'm trying to think, what sessions have you taught at Black Belt Camp?
I've worked with Master Harse and Master White on different Hyung sessions, Chodan bows. I typically am involved with Master Artika in the judging certifications.
Sure.
I've taken a special interest in that. I really want to see our judges do the best job they can for the competitors. So for probably the last 7 to 10 clinics, I'm inside with him doing judging certification, because I'd like to see our judges be the best that there are. And if I can help in any way, that's why I do that.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly on that. As far as judges, I was talking with someone recently about that. It, much like teaching, it takes a certain person to really be good at judging, not just the center judge, but the corner judges as well. What do you think some of the qualities that you have to be a good judge?
Well, you can't be afraid to speak up. You have to have an ability to project your voice, whether you're a corner or a center, because there's multiple rings and there's lots of noise. I remember back in 2006 when we were in Las Vegas, it was so loud and noisy. And if you didn't project your voice, no one was going to hear you. It's not like you're in a room by yourself. So if you're interested in judging, you can't be a quiet, meek person, even as a corner. And listen, it doesn't usually happen, but sometimes a center judge makes a mistake. And it's up to the corner judge to say, excuse me, sir, can you wait a minute? Can we talk? And then to express that privately with your center judge. And typically a good center judge will call in the other corners and confirm that. And you fix it before you move on. It's easier to fix something before it's broke than to try to fix it after it's broke. And the same with scorekeeping. Everyone thinks you have a scorekeeper and a timekeeper and you let them do it. It's the center judge's responsibility, or the corner he assigns to make sure, especially in sparring, those buys, they get confusing. And we have charts for that. And it's up to the center judge to make sure all that's in order. It's much more complicated than it looks. I find the corners that think they can go into the center, once you have all those things, all those moving parts. Now, I tell people, I try cases. I love it. It's scary when you get there, but you're on your feet and going. Try standing in the middle of two competitors that are throwing kicks and punches, and then you have to have your head on a swivel looking at 4 different corners to see which way they go and make a decision like that. It looks easy on television, but once you get in there, it takes a while to get used to it. And I would hope that the studios would start practicing more as we start approaching tournaments, because it is a lot more complicated than it looks.
Yeah, I agree. And I have always appreciated your support where, the regional events. And then in the past couple of years, obviously not last year or this year, unfortunately, but you've come and helped us with judging, and appreciate it. I think of it like this, whether I'm the center judge or the corner judge, if I'm competing, I want the judges to help me out. And I don't want to be that judge and be like, man, I saw that point and I should have called it. So because I know that feeling as a competitor of not getting a point that you feel like you should have. So
and the opposite is true too, or getting a point you shouldn't have. Like I try to implicitly tell judges, just because you hear a thud doesn't mean there's a point. If you don't see it, don't call it. Yes. Back in the old days, some centers used to get really angry if you said a no see, but body angles, it's almost impossible to see every body angle.
Sure.
And you do an injustice if you call something you didn't actually see.
Right.
So if the angle, now, if you're not paying attention, you shouldn't be there. That's obvious. But if the angle of the competitors is such, and we all know some people drift, but if the angle of the competitors is such that it was impossible for you to have a view of what happened, then you should, as a judge, call a no see. Or if you saw the block, you should call the block, which, takes a point from each competitor.
Right. A couple more people saying hi. Master Farrelly says, throw punch.
Oh, yeah. He was my partner when we tested for 5th Dan. And when he came in with the knife, I throat punched him.
Nice.
That's what that's about. And a great partner. I couldn't have asked for better. I was really happy I had someone of his caliber to make me look good, because, I always shine when I have someone of his caliber with me.
Absolutely. It's definitely helpful to have a great partner. Master Joe McCarty says hello.
Hello.
Who else we got? Master Tom Lyons. Michael Lee says great tips on judging. And Master Ramirez says hello as well. A great friend, martial artist, great master.
Hong Su, thank you. And Mr. Lyons, thank you so much. Soon to be Master Lyons, right?
That's right. Yeah, he's working on it.
I know.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone, for watching. If you have anything to ask, please feel free to ask. And Rodney says you have great Kwanjinim stories. We'll definitely get to that as well. So let's talk about your martial arts history. How did you find your way to getting started in the martial arts in the first place?
Well, when I was young, I liked to do things that weren't mainstay. I wasn't a big kid. I had two brothers that were skinny poles. And back in my day, if you weren't a skinny pole, they had two sizes. They had regular and husky. So I was the husky. They didn't have loose fit and all the stuff they have today. But I always worked out. And I was always enchanted by the martial arts, by people that could kick and the power that they would demonstrate. And so it wasn't until, I mean, back in my day, I was raised in South Philadelphia. Uh, there wasn't a lot of transportation. It wasn't easy to get around as it is today. So when I went to high school, a young man from New York had moved to Philadelphia and went to Bishop Newman, which was an old boys high school. And he started a karate club, and I was one of his first students. And instantly I fell in love with it. And then my dad said to me, because I would use my mom as my punch dummy. Of course, I'd never hit her, but she was my focus. And you know what? That woman never flinched. She had 4 kids and she could pick you off on the run, and that she just never flinched. And I'll never forget my dad saying to me, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Dad, I want to be able to do things other people can only watch on television." And he just shook his head and he walked away. But I fell in love with it from the first day, because this guy from New York, he was a skinny black guy, and I never met anyone stronger in my life. 2 of us, he would put his hand down. 2 of us would pull on it. We couldn't move him. And this was in Shotokan. And our dojang area was the concrete floor of Newman's cafeteria. We had no supervision, no guidance. It was just him and us. And he taught us how to survive on the street. It wasn't about so much about belt and ranking. And it was a lot different, because back in the early 70s, when I started 72, 73, there weren't a lot of women and children involved at all. So it was more of a discipline. Or if you got beat in class and you came back, they let you stay, as opposed to the gentle, kind version that we have today, which is, everything has it. So because not only did it help me physically and emotionally, I'm very dyslexic. So in grade school, I couldn't read or write. I flunked 4th grade. I got kicked out of 2 schools. The martial arts taught me how to focus. And once that happened, I realized when I went to class, I can pretty much remember everything the teacher said. So I went from failing or barely getting 70s to making the honor roll. And my mother, to suffice it to say, was doing backflips down Broad Street, because I was the middle one that couldn't get anywhere. And I finished, graduated high school with first honors, and I still was a terrible reader and writer. But the martial arts taught me, anything you want, if you don't quit and you work for it, you'll get it. And that's why I've had the advantage for almost 50 years now to train and teach. And I've never, ever been paid to do that. I make a living practicing law and being a lawyer, but all the teaching I do, any women's self-defense, or even that, I still every week go 2 nights a week and teach. I don't take any compensation for that. And I know I'm in a different situation. And I admire so many studios that are open. I especially admire all the families and the husbands and wives that open schools. To me, that's what this is about. And coming up even through our own association, I used to say to Grandmaster, we have to keep husbands and wives together, so that the family, you need family time. And if you have a school and you have another job before you can afford just to have the school, it takes so much time, you need family time. And I think it's wonderful that our association now has so many husbands and wives and families that stay together and teach together. It's an amazing thing.
I think that's a great story. And I love, you talked about, you've dedicated yourself to helping teach for so many years. And, in my mind, it goes back to as a kid, you realize like how beneficial it was for you. And I love talking to people that started as kids, and, cause I was older, I was 21 when I started, but being able to actually say, like, these are the things that helped me in the martial arts as a kid. I want to make sure that I can help other kids in that same way. I think it's excellent. It's awesome.
It's amazing. So you give back what you get, and then you turn into a karate geek like we are. You know, every strip mall you drive by, what are you looking for? A karate school. You know, that's just part of what we do. And you know, there was the time when I after high school, I trained again in Shotokan with a gentleman that had a very small school at 10th in Oregon, and it was in his basement. And then after that, after I finished college, when I got married 3 weeks after college, and I had law school to complete. And my wife and I, we were broke. So even though I didn't have the time or the money to go train formally, I met a bunch of guys in law school that trained in all different arts: Taekwondo, Kung Fu, Shotokan, Jiu-Jitsu. So there was an empty room on the top of our cafeteria. And once a week, we would all get together and train together because none of us had the time because of the demands of law school to do that. And so I continued that even with friends after I got out until I started my own firm. So that took relentless hours. I mean, just hour upon hour. So when I got out in 83, I came back and I went to Shin in 89. And I've been training there in Tong Soo Do ever since.
Wow. What was it? How did you find Shin Karate back then?
I'll tell you. I was in the same homeroom all 4 years of high school with Master Minelli. Carmen Minelli and I were in the same homeroom. And I knew Carmen did Shotokan and Jiu-Jitsu that he called a Kudokan.
Right.
So I always said to him, you know, and the guy that I trained with through college, he passed away. And I always said, if I need a place to come, that I would come down with Carmen. And so that's what I did. It was January, I believe, of 89. And I didn't ask to come in as any rank. I started over. I didn't want to come in. I wanted to learn the art from the beginning. And what amazed me was their sister arts. Shotokan and Tong Soo Do, a lot of their forms are the same, a little bit of difference. Shotokan doesn't really kick above the waist, and they have snap kicks as opposed to thrust kicks. But Shotokan taught me how to explode and go in. Tong Soo Do taught me circular movement. So when I first came over and started sparring, all the guys that I fought would only use their legs. So I got to use my hands a lot. And that was foreign to a lot of guys. So back then you were allowed to make contact. So I found when you cracked someone's rib, they're not as inclined to kick you in the face. So it was amazing how similar the arts were. I remember when I came in, Master Marvel was the chief instructor on the second floor of Shin. And Master Claus was there, and Master Fisher and Master Castelli were younger. They're about 10 years or 11 years younger than I am. And it was just a great crew. You know, you worked really hard, you sweat, there was no air conditioning, and they barely ever opened a window. So it was great.
I know, sadly, Master Marvel just recently passed.
Yes.
Could you share any stories about him? I've heard a lot about him. I never got a chance to meet him.
Well, he was one of those tall, wiry guys, and just fast as lightning. I mean, Master Fisher coming up after him was kind of the same way, just fast as lightning. I used to spar a lot with Master Fisher, and I asked him one day, I don't know if he'll remember this, I said, "Why do you pick me?" He said, well, you're one of the few people that can take my shots." And pretty much that's what you were, a punching bag for him, because he was so fast. His feet moved faster than most people's hands. But that's the way we came up in those days. You know, you had, the motto was you had to learn to take a beating in order to give a beating. You know, and it was a lot different.
Yeah, I always call that the take one to give one guy. You take a shot so you can give one better. Yeah. But I learned in my first Tong Soo Do tournament, I fought this big tall guy, and he mopped the floor with me. And that's where I learned you can't stay on the outside. If you're a small guy, you got to cut down that distance. Right. And you circle and you cut and you get in. And I did very well sparring. I was the first, well, I didn't know. What took me back was when I turned 35, they told me I had to fight in the senior division. And I was aghast. I said, I'm only 35 years old. By this time, I had already been paralyzed and had major spine surgery. And Kwajinim knew that. So he wouldn't let me fight down. He said no, because it took me a year. I had a surgeon slice my throat and do a discectomy and bone fusion in 1993 on Friday the 13th. Wow.
So he knew that, and he wouldn't, I wanted to fight down. I said, I'm not old. I'm not fighting with these old guys. But let me tell you something. Master Padobianco and guys like that were tough, tough competitors. Nothing old about them, 35 and older. So it was a great division. And I was the first in Region 8 in our local championships to take 3 senior grand champions in a row. So I enjoyed the sparring and the fighting. And then when I got invited to the Masters Clinic and they said, you're not allowed to do it anymore. I remember in 2004, my wife was driving me in Orlando and she said, you don't look happy. What's the matter? I said, well, I can't spar anymore. She said, do you want another stupid trophy or you want that belt? I said, okay, you made a point. So it's all good stuff.
Yeah. It's one of those, I actually talked to Master Fisher about that when I was going through the process, and I asked him how he felt. And for him, he said it was like turning the page on a chapter of his life that he was ready to be done with, because he put so much effort and training into competition, probably probably more than anyone in World Tong Soo Do. And
he worked harder than most people.
Yeah.
He was in training. And the thing that struck me different about us, I mean, there's a lot of associations, 4 years you get your master's rank, and they call you master's rank. Our rank is master instructor. So your job changes from about you, even though you teach, master instructor, now you have a commitment to get out there and teach whenever you can and to help people and do whatever you can to further the teachings of Tong Soo Do and the World Tong Soo Do Association. So that hit me the most. I'm not just being promoted to master. My rank is master instructor, which now has the responsibility to teach and give back whenever you can.
That's great. Can you share some stories about Grandmaster Shin? You remember the first time you met him?
Yeah, he was in his office a lot, and you would bow and you would walk, and he just seemed like this mystical figure. But in 1993, a second-degree black belt that was training at Shin got bumped while he was sparring and hurt his knee, and he sued Grandmaster and the association for damages. And I'll never forget, Master Gordon had called me into the office, or called me on the phone, I can't remember. And he asked me if I would be interested in representing Grandmaster Shin. And I said, well, doesn't he have insurance? And back then, the answer was no. So that's for all you people out there, make sure you have proper insurance. So I did defend him. It took a while. The plaintiff, the young man who was the second-degree black belt and got hurt, he went through 4 lawyers, because to me, the law was clear that if you're properly supervised and evenly matched by rank, there's just no liability. That goes for training, it goes for sparring, it goes for anything else. So it took a long haul, and we were coming up to trial, and I needed an expert. And the number one expert in my mind, the best person to testify for Grandmaster Shin back then, without a doubt, was Master Godwin, because with all the studios he owned and he's got more knowledge than, in my mind, more than 10 people, just about the whole existence of the martial arts. And he agreed to be the expert. And just before trial, they decided they knew they couldn't win. And rather than spend the money for an expert they couldn't get, they withdrew. So that was my first interaction with him. And it was funny, because when I said, yes, you want me to come to his office and meet with him, Master Gordon said, no, he wants to come to your office. So he wanted to see where my house was in my law firm, because I had my own law firm by then and I was doing pretty well. I was trying a lot of cases, and that hit me. It stuck with me. He wants to come and check out my house and see what I'm about. And then after that, it was funny. People said, when did you become the lawyer for the association? Well, after that case, I was reading the newsletter. And in the newsletter, it said, oh, the association lawyer, Vince Melchiorre. And I went, no one ever told me. So I called Maggie and I said, Mag, she said, is that a problem? I said, no, but it would be nice to know. That's how I found out. So, I mean, and it was good, because in that capacity, I would sit with him for different things. But the one thing I emphasized with him is, I'm not one to tell you what you want to hear. I'm one to tell you what you need to know. And in that capacity, we've had some heated discussions, I'll say. But always, he was wicked smart. But sometimes you want what you want. And, I did that for 16 and a half years as a volunteer attorney for the association. And it's funny because, pardon me, Grandmaster Strong asked me if I could do a little paper for him as to what some of the things I did. And the problem is I really can't talk about particular things because I can't mention names because it's all privileged.
Right.
And I tell people, like say a priest, you go to confession, the priest has a screen, the people that tell them the confession, they go away, you don't see them anymore. Well, in some of the things I have to deal with, I know the people, they know me. I have to fix the problem, no matter how big of a goober they may have been. I fix the problem and then I got to see them all the time. And you can't say anything because that's my oath that I don't disclose cases and information about people that I've had to do things for. So although people don't see, I mean, I can tell you about stuff like every time if we had a tournament or we traveled or something happened, there were times I think we were in Florida or California. Some kids jumped on a golf cart from one of the security guards and ran it through one of the walls or something. And I had to take care of all that. I mean, it doesn't end. Territorial disputes, siblings and family in the same dojang or wanting to split up. I mean, all kinds of anything and everything that could come up. I would get calls for, but it was a real learning process.
One of the things that you said earlier that I can attest to is you say the things that people need to hear, and in training with you I don't know if the word is like, but you make a point to talk about the real life scenarios and the real life situations that you can be put in. And you kind of talked about this earlier, growing up in South Philly. Obviously you probably had to deal with some tough situations in the streets or on the subway or things like that.
Yeah, it was different. And my first instructor in high school, I tell people this and they don't have a hard time believing it. The thing he emphasized to us is you need, with one or two blows, you need to maim or kill. He trained us for the street. He didn't train us for tournament. He didn't train us for belts. And today people hear that, but all you have to do is look out what's happening today in the world. Kids today have no conception of life and death. I think we're so animated. Kids today spend so much time on videos and doing things that aren't in the real world, having human contact, that death doesn't seem to mean anything anymore. I tell people I am a pacifist. I despise violence. I will use every ounce of my strength in my body and my will to avoid violence. But there's some times that you can't. So you have to ask yourself, do you want to be a warrior in a garden or a gardener in a war? You want to be prepared and hope you never need it, or need it and not have it? That's why we train. I find the better prepared you are with training, the less likely you'll ever need it. And that comes out in the way you carry yourself, the way you're attentive to your surroundings, and the things in that nature. Bad people don't want to pick on people that will give them a hard time. And there's a lot of videos and a lot of things out on this. If you look at a lion and they see a pack of gazelles, the lion will sit there no matter how hungry it is and look and wait for the gazelle that walks away or the weakest gazelle, and then they'll attack. They want the weakest. They don't want the fight. Well, that generally happens on the street. It's not all the time. Sometimes you just have an asocial guy that wants to kill people, and there's nothing you can do about that. But my primary concern is preparing people for what's outside. And that's multiple attackers, and it's unrelenting. The only rule in the street is whoever inflicts the most injury first wins, period. So I find as Americans, we're always in a hurry. I try to emphasize to my class, perfect it slow, it works fast. Fast and sloppy never works. So slow down, get your basics. I tell them white belt to black belt, you learn your hands and feet. From black belt above, you have to learn internal key power, because that's where the real power of the martial arts comes from. is your internal will, your internal key energy. And until you can harness that, you're just moving your hands and feet.
That's a great way to verbalize it, and it's tough. I deal with that every day. Is getting trying to get not just kids but adults as well to slow down and take their time and visualize what they're doing, right? Not just walking through emotions. So that's great. Like Grandmaster Shin said, always practice your basics all the time.
Yeah, and I'll tell them, you think because you've done that 1,000 times, that's a lot.
Right.
100,000 times. I mean, I try to set Sundays to go through all my forms and my stuff by myself, so that I keep up with everything in my own practice. But I do it at 100%. Some weeks I'll walk through it so that I have my form and my technique proper. And some weeks I'll do it at 100%. But when I do a class and the class does 3 or 4 forms and they're not even breathing heavy, I tell them, you can know enough to get a belt. You know the moves, but that belt's not going to save you outside. It's what's in your heart that's going to save you. Because if you're an attacker, the strongest weapon anyone has is their mind. As long as the mind can function, you can be injured or killed. So you have to find ways, and people don't like to talk about that. It's not a pleasant topic. But if you get past that and learn what you have to do, like I said, the chances are you may never have to do that.
Absolutely. Couple more people are saying hello. Zuberi Richardson, Mr. Richardson saying hello. Stephen Koya says hello. Tom Lyons has a question. He says, I know you've done a lot for the association, but you've also done a lot for the community. Can you give some examples of how you've given back to the community?
Oh boy. Well, for years I've taught for the Red Cross. I was certified in basic and standard first aid and CPR as a water safety instructor and a basic watercraft instructor. And I thought I had all 5 of those by the time I was 17, and I thought I'd make a fortune. Well, it turns out I turned out to be a volunteer for the Red Cross. I just think, I know, I always said, and I've taught my children, God gave me the ability to do well. He didn't make it easy and he didn't give it to me, but because I have no mental or physical handicaps to prevent me, I have an obligation to give back. So that's one of the other reasons I teach for free. But I also was a volunteer child advocate in the court system for kids in DHS. And as a result of that, I have a foster son, Marcel, who's now, in fact, I just talked to him before we came on. He's 26 years old now. And we talk at least 4 days a week. He's living with some friends and, he's working. And, I've had him, he's been with us since he's 15. And that, it's hard to explain the joy you get out of watching someone who was raised in foster care and whose mom was a junkie, never knew his dad. It's just amazing for him to excel on his level and to watch him do that, and to know whenever he has a problem, he'll call me and he'll talk it through before he does something foolish. Unfortunately, last weekend, one of his best friends was just shot and killed, and he took that really bad. And I had to spend some time with him and help him get through that, and how to deal with his job, and taking some time to get through that with that. And, some jobs are unrelenting. They don't want to hear anything, but, it's a very difficult situation when someone from the street has 1 or 2 really close friends and one of them gets shot to death. So, but I get more out of it, I think, than I give. I do a lot with kids and youth because I think it's important. Someone asked me when I was a judge, the Bar Association, know your volunteer hours. And I said, I've never kept track. I don't do it to keep track of it. So, but I've been blessed. I mean, I've been blessed to be able to do that. It's helped me more, I think, than anyone I've ever helped.
That's amazing. And having a father who went through the foster system, I can appreciate you giving back in that way, because I know it's not easy. And but like you said, the things that you get back from it are, tenfold what you give. So I thank you for that. You know, from someone who, like I said, had family members who dealt with that as a kid. That means a lot.
Well, I think one of the best examples of that is if you look at our senior masters in our region, in our association, you look at all the time they put in above and beyond their own schools. You know, just the Region 8 people from, you know, Master Mamitis, Master Fattori, Master Fisher, and I don't want to not name it. I mean, all of our senior masters, they put in so much time and effort. You know, the way Master Peterman runs our tournaments now and all the things, that takes so much time. The black belt tests, our regular instructors classes, our leadership classes. To watch the people that I admire, I've learned, like, that's dedication. That takes time from your family, takes time from your life. And they do that freely and willingly. That's, to me, one of the best examples of true leadership, is the way our region and our leadership takes control, and it's never enough. They'll always go the extra mile to make sure everyone in our association is being looked after and taken care of. And now more than ever, if there's a problem, they're willing to listen and try to deal with it. You know, it's old schools loosened up a little bit, and there's good and bad, but just the leadership that we have in our association, but especially in our Region 8, it's amazing. And I'm honored to be able to follow in those footsteps.
Absolutely. You talk about that leadership and following the footsteps. Master Casarano was one of those guys that, you know, led by example. He could be a quiet guy at association events, but you know, from what I've heard, if you got him talking or joking around, no one was a bigger jokester than him.
Yeah, well, not just that. It was probably the singularly hardest class I ever took was when I went to his studio. I just thought I was going to die. And I thought I was a pretty, you know, tough distance runner, but that guy could train you in ways you couldn't imagine in an hour's time. That's how good he was, you know, and a leader among leaders, just an amazing man.
My master Aaron Watson would always talk about the leadership. Like, whenever he showed up for leadership class, you knew that you were getting worked out, and then you were probably also running out in Philly in your bare feet.
Yeah, and that's, you know, on cement. That's it reminds me when I started in the 70s, they would have us run in the snow in our bare feet with someone on our shoulders. And the 6 blocks in the snow wasn't bad. It's when your feet started thawing that the pain really kicked in.
Right.
You know, it's amazing what I learned at Shin, because I never had a pretest for black belt at Shin that was less than 5 hours, ever. And it taught me that my mind tells my body what to do. It's not the other way around. If you think that you're tired, you will be. But if you say to yourself, I'm not going to quit. And when I took my last pretest for 3rd degree, I thought then that was going to be the last test I would ever take. I didn't know that I would ever be invited to test for master, because at that time, I believe I was the first non-studio owner master that was made, because the bylaws said either own a school or significant professional services donated. And I guess at that time, and it wasn't, I didn't get any breaks, because I was Samdan 6 years, almost 7 years before I was invited. And then I was 12 years between 4th and 5th. And I don't care. My joy out of this association is training with the people. Just the really, really high caliber, kind people that we have, that we see every time we go to something. Everyone's always with a hello, how you doing? They bow. I mean, you don't get that in other associations like you do with ours.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. And I just sent out a note to our studio about the nationals coming up in October, and man, I can't wait for it, because it's just going to be, it's going to be like a homecoming.
Yeah, and I wish they advertised that more. I saw a blurb, and then I actually reached out. I was talking with Master Heiss. I said, the national's going to be there in October. She said, yeah. I said, well, we have to pump that up a little bit more. I haven't, I'm trying to tell my son and anyone who wants to go, get your room at Kalahari now, because it's going it's going to go in a flash.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
It's
I already
gonna
got
be
my room,
great
but
event. We got the nationals. We're going Grandmaster Strong is going to promote to 9th degree.
yeah.
If you're watching and you want to come, I would reach out and book your room.
Well, I was in Connecticut when they had the first one, and what a great time. I mean, just absolutely a fantastic time. My son and I drove up, and I didn't realize, one, how close it was, and two, what a magnificent place up there in Connecticut. And then we were supposed to go to Chicago. So I guess after this one, to get everybody back, maybe the next one will be in Chicago.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to go to Chicago. I
Never
know that Grandmaster Bodwin was really happy with that first event, and
it was so much fun. He smiled from ear to ear the whole time, and it was great to see everybody. And it was nice to go somewhere different. So I thought they were going to try, as things get better, we have our world championships, and then in between years we would have the national championships.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Master Olson from California says, hello from California. How do you help your students connect with their ki? You mentioned that once they get to black belt, you try to help them connect, figure out how to use their ki. She said, I'd love to hear more about that.
Well, what it is I try to explain the youngsters, it's like Legos. You put them in the place and then you snap. You have to, every move you make has to engage your core. And if your belt's not turning and your waist isn't turning, you're not engaging your core. Shotokan was great for that. I mean, I love Tung Sudo, and as I said, it's a sister art to Shotokan. Shotokan 70% hands, Tung Sudo 70% legs. But the merging rather of the two of them, Shotokan really taught me what it was to be able to explode and get from one point to another with incredible power, ki. And it just takes time. You're instructors, and as you train, you have to slow down. If you're doing a C step and you land with your foot straight, you're not engaging your core. As Americans, everybody's in a hurry. Everybody wants to get through the ranking system and do that. But all good things don't come real quick. Sometimes you have to wait. And you have to let your body learn by repetition. And if you slow down and you understand even simple things like people that lift their arm instead of coming straight out. Lift your arm, it's a rotator punch. Coming out is a body punch from your core. Little things like that. That's why we do things the way we do. And it's worked for thousands of years by these teachings. Now, people modernize and they teach in different ways, which is great. A lot more children and families coming into it is wonderful. But the true essence of it is so that smaller people could defend against larger people. When in feudal times, when you were taken over by a land baron, they took all your weapons. So you had to use farm tools, tonfas, staffs, sais, and you had to use your body. And you had to know how to generate that kind of power to defeat someone that was twice your size. So slow down, learn how to breathe. If you're not engaging your core on every move, you're not practicing ki. Ki is what takes you to the finish line.
Sure. I had a story the other day. I was working with the advanced kids class, and I just had them picking their foot up and throwing a side kick out and holding it. And they're all bouncing around. And I was like, okay, I want you to squeeze your core muscles, tighten your abs, squeeze your glutes, and they all laugh. And it's like, yeah, you got to use those muscles. And all of a sudden they're like, hey, that works.
It's like you get, yeah. And the little things that make it work well, and it gives it the power it deserves. The heel face in the direction of the kick. The leg that's down has to be bent. If it's not bent, it's like a stick on the sidewalk. It'll just fall. Your weight will shift. Master Vaughn and Master Gordon, they were big on keeping your center. Master Vaughn taught me about the plumb line. Your body's a plumb line. You have to have one center under the other or you're going to go. Well, when you throw a kick, you have to have your weight balanced. Your bottom knee has to be bent. The heel has to be facing in the direction of the kick. And that's where your power comes from without teetering over either way. And I always tell my students, it looks easy on television. Grab a chair. Practice the lift and the turn without the kick. Do that for 100 times on one side and 100 times on the other side. Get the movement down. People, my students laugh, especially the kids. I tell them, go home and practice the twist. If you practice the twist, balls of your feet, that's how we maneuver. Once your heels are down, it straightens your knees, you're pinned to the floor. So if you practice on the balls of your feet, or if they watch, I tell them, watch any good boxer, it's all in the balls of their feet and it's all from their hips. Watch a baseball player who hits a home run. What's the first thing that happens? His hips lead the way. A golfer, his hips lead the way and the swing comes after the core. That's all the fundamentals we're trying to teach.
My youngest daughter is playing softball this year for the first time. And I was telling her that, and it's like, I know you're going to dismiss it because you're like, oh, dad's just using karate. I was like, you use your core in everything. In my opinion, do it better than most.
Yeah. Well, I raised 3 swimmers all through college, and they know how to twist and turn and use their core. But, it's funny, sometimes being a parent, you can tell your kids something and they just don't get it when someone else tells them the same thing. The best example of that, I would tell my son for years what Master Vaughn told me about the plumb line. Your plumb line it's like what the carpenters use to make things straight. So you have to have one under the other. And he just didn't seem to get it. So he was training with some friends of his because he trained in Shotokan as well. He's a black belt in Tang Soo Do as well. And he came home and he goes, Dad, this instructor tonight was amazing. I said, yeah, why is that, Steve? And he said to me, your body's like a door hinge. One hinge is under the other and all your weight has to be right up and down. And I looked at him, I said, kind of like a plumb line, right, Steve? And he went, oh yeah. And it was amazing how when someone else who wasn't his dad told him it in a different way, it clicked. And sometimes that's all you need.
That's it. That's all you need. You need to hear the same thing from a different voice. I was going to mention Steven. He did Shotokan, and then a couple of years ago he got his black belt in Tang Soo Do. Does he train at Shin Karate too? Or
he does. He trained when he was young. When he got his black belt actually when he's around 10, and I made him become a lifetime member. Then he swam. He came to me. This was like for me. We went to California in 2000, and he took a gold medal for Sip-Soo. And that year I took a gold medal in fighting, and it was like a father-son trip. But then he came to me when he was 12, and he said, Dad, I'm pretty good at swimming. He said, I want to swim full time. And for me personally, it broke my heart because we traveled a lot together. We trained together, but I wanted him to excel in what he thought he was best at. And he did well. He made nationals at 14. He swam Division I in college. So he focused on that. When he came back home from college, he went to St. Bonaventure way up in Olean, New York. He went into probation. And I said, Steven, you're on the street now. You have to have a discipline to keep you motivated. And he had gotten an apartment at 44th and Walnut, and Okasaki was right around the corner. So I knew that drive from there all the way coming across the Grace Ferry Bridge to South Philly, sometimes that traffic and all was going to be maybe enough to stop him from training regularly. So he went around the corner to Okasaki and he trained there for 4.5, 5 years. He still does, and got his black belt in Shotokan, which was good by me because I love Shotokan as well as Tang Soo Do. That was my first love for 15 or so years. But he has that swimmer's power. He's so strong, it's scary. When we spar sometimes, the last time we did, he cracked my shin open. I blocked with my shin one of his kicks. I thought he was going to kill me, but he's got some brute strength. And it's good that, like I said, they're sister arts anyway, Tang Soo Do and Shotokan. So when he would spar at Shotokan, the look on somebody's face when he would smack him in the side of the face because he knows how to do a crescent kick or a high roundhouse kick, they weren't used to that. But he was a black belt in Tang Soo Do before he was in Shotokan. And then he does come over to Shin and train with us there as well.
That's right. Yeah, a couple of years ago, he started to come to more events, and I saw him catch up with guys like Louis and Max and Brandon Downs, doing sparring and stuff with them at Black Belt Clinic and then competing, and he fit right in with that group.
Oh yeah, he loved it. He loved having guys his age that he could compete with. And in fact, I just talked to him, told him Nationals was coming. So, he just started his career path as a financial consultant. So he's really busy with that. During the pandemic, he put it to use and passed all his licensing and as a fiduciary financial investor. But he is going to start coming back more regularly because he does want to compete, if at all possible, at the Nationals.
Nice. You've mentioned in the interview so far traveling for world championships and obviously going to masters clinics and things like that. Are there other places that you've been able to travel to train Tang Soo Do or teach?
Probably the biggest honor of my life was when I was in Maui, Hawaii. What are the chances you'd be there at the same time one of your grandmasters was on vacation and you both got to teach at the same night in Maui, Hawaii? Well, that was me and Grandmaster Bowden. And that's when I really got to know him and got a chance to talk to him and just to see how magnificent his background was. I mean, to start in Korea. And when he told me the story about he always wanted to go in an Ivy League school, and when he went into service, they said, we'll put you in, like, I think Stanford, but you have to take Chinese. They used to fly him over the war zone. He would intercept the Chinese, like in the Secret Service kind of stuff. What an amazing man. I just felt so honored to be there and teach with him. But I'll never forget the studio at that time. It was like on a beach and they had the water and it was gorgeous. And I'm standing at the door and I'm looking and the young lady that ran the school at the time, I said, this is amazing. And she said, don't you have this where you train? I looked at her, I said, South Philly, we have hubcaps and gunshots. We don't have water and sand. So he looked at me like I was crazy, but yeah, that was probably one of the biggest honors of my life. I did the warm up and he did everything else. And I was at all that was like my first real one-on-one with Grandmaster Bowden. And what an amazing man.
Yeah, that's great. I actually, believe it or not, a similar story where we were in Aruba and for the Region 18 championships, and him and Grandmaster Strong were there. So we got some time to chat with him, and I just remember how amazing he was talking to my youngest daughter. He's like, oh, that's, there's the firecracker. Like, I got my eye on you. And then he just walks, we're at the pool and he's just walking by, he waves and just goes on about his business. And it's like, man, he was just such a great man.
It's amazing that the higher leadership in those days between Grandmaster Strong had a master's degree, Grandmaster Bowden had a doctorate, and Grandmaster Strong has a doctorate and would lecture for National Geographics. We used to go down a little bit early and I would go over to Grandmaster Strong's studio. And I still have one of his shirts. I have some shirts that are so old I can't even take them out anymore. But it's just an experience you get that you can't get often because of the distance between us. But to see men like that, the wisdom and the knowledge they have, and that they share so willingly and freely, it's pretty amazing.
Throughout the years, you said you've been able to balance teaching, very on a regular basis for, you said, how long have you been training? Almost 50 years now? It's
about 49.
What are some of your, I don't know, secrets, but the work life family balance, how were you able to achieve that throughout the years?
Sometimes I look back and I can't figure it out, but I don't watch a lot of sports on television. I played them all. I don't watch them. I don't golf. I don't fish. My wife laughs when I want to relieve stress. I tell her, I go put my pajamas on and we smack each other around. I'm all good. So when I met my wife in 1976, I was already training. So she knew coming into this relationship how important it was to me. Because back then I went to college. I worked in a law office. I took at least 2 or 3 days of martial arts classes, and then I came home and lifted and ran. So I was always a little bit nuts that way. And she knew that. So given that I don't do all those other things, she knew that this was very important to me. And I don't miss a lot of things. I try to always be there for the big family events. She used to come with the kids a lot, like the world championships and stuff. And then she finally like, I don't want to do that. I tried to get my daughters to train. They had no interest, but my son did. I always say that they're part Sicilian, so they didn't need the training because they're pretty being Sicilian girls, they're pretty tough as it is. But she knows that that's the one thing. Like now through the summer, we usually have a place down the shore. So as soon as graduations and things are over, I'll start getting together with Miss Devine, and I'll drive over to Mays Landing with her and her third-degree black belts, and just us, and we'll have like a 2 or 3 hour session on Saturdays, and it's great because it's fun, and we don't have to do that, but we do it because we enjoy it and we each learn something, And then last summer, even Master DeMarco stopped by because I think he teaches there 1 or 2 nights a week.
Right.
Stops in, but it's just. She knows from day one when she met me, this is something I'm going to do. And it's something I'm going to do forever. I remember after my spine surgery, I can't tell you how many people said to me, "Oh, you're done with that now, right?" And I looked at them, I said, "Are you kidding me?" It took me a year before I was allowed to come back. But what I did was I went to class the same 2 nights I always went to class. And I either sat or I walked around because I knew if I stopped going, I'd get out of the habit. So for a year, having not being able to allow to put a uniform on and train, I still went because you know what it's like, because it's an infection. When you get that martial arts bug, you can't get rid of it. No medicine or no matter what they do to you is going to take it away from you. And there's something that happens. I've had people that know me from practicing law and as being a judge. They've come by the studio and they say, "I didn't recognize you. You're a different person." And that's what happens. It's like a love affair with something that means so much to you I find when I'm in front of a class, I feel so comfortable. In fact, one of the scariest moments is when Master Robinson asked me to teach the instructor's class, and they break that up. And I said to him, "Okay, how much do you want me to teach?" He said, "All of it." And I was like, "Am I going to do like 3 hours?" But I did an old school. I did all warm up with the hips. I did just twisting and turning, and you have 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th degrees in there. And I'll never forget, Master Gallagher called me when he got home, and I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Vince, what did you do to me?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I can't get out of the car." He said, you had me turning and twisting, and that's where, and we all know that. And then as we do this, we can't let the gas off. I tell my students, you have to train like your life depended on in every class, because what you do inside is what you'll do outside.
Well, I speak for myself, and I'm sure other people feel the same, that I'm inspired and motivated. The fact that you're still training, and you just hear you talking about how much you love it, and not only do you teach, but you train on your own still. It's incredibly motivating. I appreciate you sharing your story today. Is there anything else? Believe it or not, we're at the hour mark. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up?
Well, just everyone be true to yourself. Train hard. Realize there's a lot of associations out there. This to me is a big family. That's what keeps me here. It's so nice to see everyone everywhere you go. Everyone's so nice to you, and they look out for you. And you don't get that everywhere. The leaders we have in this organization are amazing. And that's incentive for me to keep going on any day. And it's just the friendships and the family feeling that any event I go to, or even in the studio, all studios are different. For me, the number one thing that's propelling this association forward are family studios, husbands and wives and children that get to stay together now. In the old days, you'd have to open up your own school. Now, things change, things are modernized. And I think it's so much for the better that families get to stay together and train together. And that's how this association is going to grow, by having this tight-knit family core. And I think it's wonderful.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for joining me, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for watching. And I hope to see you in person sooner than later, sir.
Absolutely. It's been my honor. I'm very honored that you asked me, and thank you very much. Tung Su.
All right. Tung Su. Bye, everyone.